Good morning. How's everyone doing? You gotta love an event that gives you an after party, right? All right, well, today we'll see just how highly caffeinated you are. So, innovation. What does that mean? It's become so ubiquitous, right? Has it become meaningless? The word innovation is attached to everything now. Your healthcare products, your car, the frosting on your cupcakes. I just saw an ad for cigarettes that claimed to be innovative. What does it mean? I came to the study of innovation through kind of a unique path. I originally trained as a dentist. That's a story for another time. But when I came to study innovation and left dentistry, I wanted to read everything I could get my hands on to understand what it is, how it's applied, how it can work to solve problems. So I read books, blogs, anything you can think of, just to really understand what innovation is all about. And after a short period of time, I realized that what I was learning and reading wasn't necessarily something new. Not to say that there weren't new and innovative products and services being developed in the world around us, but rather that the approaches I was learning were something that was kind of repackaged or a new application of something old. You're probably wondering what Taylor Swift has to do with innovation. So, as I was going through all these blogs and journals and thinking, what's really new, it always reminded me of magazines like this one, where the same content gets repeated over and over again and repackaged in different ways. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to see what it looks like if we did that and replaced the words weight loss and sex with innovation. So here he is, Jeff Bezos as our cover boy, talking about late night innovation. So, innovation. It really is everywhere. But today, what I really want to do is talk to you about the link between scarcity and innovation. And I simply just want to share stories about it that inspired me and really changed the way that I work. And I hope they'll inspire you too. So, what is innovation? What does it mean? Who does it? Whose job is it? What resources do we need? And is it possible that if we have fewer resources, it can actually enhance our ability to innovate? Remember this guy from Economics? Joseph Schumpeter, Austrian-Hungarian economist. He said that innovation is the successful commercial exploitation of new ideas. Now, through my research, I learned that in resource-rich areas, like in developed economies, there's a traditional approach to innovation, and it's usually driven out of R&D, research and development. So it's pretty expensive, it's usually fairly structured, and top-down. So it's done by people whose job it is to innovate. Unfortunately, that traditional approach that worked really well for a long time in the US and many other places, it's just not working anymore. Why? Because we're facing tremendous economic volatility, complexity, globalization, connectivity, competition. Right? A recent Booz & Company report shows that 1,000 of the world's most innovative companies across sectors last year spent $600 billion on R&D to drive these breakthrough or disruptive innovations. And they really didn't get that. What they got was kind of incremental innovation, not the game changers they were looking for. On top of this volatility and complexity, consumers worldwide, including right here in the US, are becoming more and more frugal. They want higher value products and services at a lower cost. And on top of that, they want more customization. They want products and services that really speak to them and their unique situation. So how are we going to address this? Is it even possible? Meet Ari Mashelkar. He's a scientist from India, and I would say a scion of innovation as well. And he defined something called frugal innovation. And that is value for money. Pretty straightforward, higher value, lower cost. And value for many, and I think this value for many is so interesting because when we create products and services that are lower cost, it's not only more accessible by greater numbers of people. I think the value for many really reflects who's solving problems, how problems are being resolved, how consumers are taking an active role in that. During my own research, looking at the approach to innovation in India, I interviewed hundreds of grassroots entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, and I learned that the approach to innovation in emerging markets like India is almost diametrically opposed to the traditional approach in developed economies. As we traveled across the country, I kept hearing this word called jugad. And I just thought, what is this jugad? Even during my interviews in my own team, saying, if we'd run into a problem, if we had a time constraint or a financial constraint, they would say, it's okay, jugad karenge, jugad karenge. And I thought, what is this jugad? This kind of rolls off the tongue, by the way. You want to try it? Jugad. That's good. So, and it turned out that this jugad is a way to solve problems in spite of even severe resource constraints. And I saw this in my own team. Out of almost nothing, it seemed they would solve our problems. Not always to the 100%, but to 70 or 80%, to a good enough solution that worked really well, and sometimes to the 100%. It was truly remarkable. So we learned more about this, and then my co-authors and I coined a phrase called Jugaad Innovation. And Jugaad Innovation is a frugal, flexible, and inclusive approach to innovation, most active in emerging markets. I think one of the most interesting things that I learned is that Jugaad is not really unique to India. It's reflected in the language of other emerging economies as well, like Gambiara in Brazil, Zizhu Chuangjin in China, Juakali in Kenya, and I would say here in the US, it's most like DIY, or do it yourself, right? Kind of like this maker movement that's emerging. We're starting to solve our own problems. Important to take note of. The biggest driver of Jugaad innovation is scarcity. If necessity is the mother of invention, then scarcity is the grandmother of innovation. And that could be scarcity of natural resources, access to affordable capital. It could be time. And unfortunately, in certain environments, innovating in scarcity is a matter of life and death. So I learned that individuals and organizations typically innovate by asking what-if questions, right? What if I could solve this problem? And in developing economies, these what-if questions tend to be very fundamental. So I met someone who asked this what-if question. What if I could create a refrigerator that operates without electricity? And this person who asked the question didn't have a PhD or an MBA or even come out of a big research lab. He didn't even finish high school. He's a villager who lives in the deserts of India. And what he did was identify a basic need in his community, and he addressed it based on fundamental constraints. This is Mansukbhai. He's the villager who invented a $40 clay refrigerator called Mitti that works without electricity. He lives in a place where there isn't access to electricity, or if there is, it's inadequate or irregular. This is totally green. It's biodegradable, can store fruits and vegetables for up to 5 days, and it was a big reset for his community. I want to show you a little bit more of his story.
2001 में गुजरात में भूकंप आया और ये इधर का जो कहने का मतलब क्या है पत्रकार वो संदेश पेपर में उसने एक फ़ोटो दिया हमारा मटका फूट गया और इसने इसमें लिखा है कि गरीबों का फ्रिज का भूखा। तो मैंने सोचा ये एक जो मटका जो गरीबों के लिए फ्रिज हो सकता है तो सही में गरीबों के लिए मैं फ्रिज क्यों नहीं बनाऊँ। तो मैंने ये रेड मॉडल पहले बनाया। इसमें 18 लीटर पानी आते हैं पीने के लिए और ये नल से पीते हैं पानी और अंदर 5 दिन तक सब्जियां और फ्रूट बिगड़ते नहीं।
5 दिन?
5 दिन तक।
With starting capital of less than $1,000, Mansukbhai had not just invented a clay refrigerator, he'd invented a whole new way of working with clay, a brand new industrial process.
हमारा जो मिट्टी है, हम डायरेक्ट जो नॉर्मल लोग बनाते हैं, ये डायरेक्ट मिट्टी का पाउडर बना के इसमें पानी डाल के बनाते हैं। हम क्या करते हैं, पहले इसको लिक्विड बनाते हैं, लिक्विड के बाद सुखाते हैं, सुखाने के बाद हम इसको मिक्सिंग करते हैं पग मिल में।
There's a very good reason so many local women choose to spend their days and all of their free time in Mansukbhai's workshop. They're here to learn how to work with clay and how to make molds to cast beautiful clay artifacts.
પહેલા માટી કેવી હતી એ ઓળખી લીધી એમ, પછી મોલ બનાવવાનું શીખ્યા અમે કે મોલ કેવી રીતના બનાવવાનું। फिर हम 4 महीने से आ रहे और 2 महीने बाद सर्टिफिकेट मिलेगा, इसलिए 2 साल।
And the government-approved certificates give these women a profession to be proud of and an additional source of income. Mansukbhai may not have an MBA or a PhD, but his constraint-free mindset allowed him to develop new products and create a new market using traditional materials while improving living conditions for his entire community. It's inspiring, right? Mansukbhai used resourcefulness and a flexible mindset to solve a big problem in his community. It's a huge lifestyle improvement in the place where he lives. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned from Mansukbhai that I want to share with you is that scarcity reframed is abundance. Let's switch locations to the US. This is Jane Chen. She grew up in California and she attended Stanford for her MBA. Then there she took a class at the D School called Entrepreneurial Design for Extreme Affordability. Okay? And in this class, they were challenged to make an incubator at 1% of the cost of a traditional incubator. 1%, so not affordable. That's extremely affordable, right? So she and her classmates set out to Nepal, the area that they were looking at in South Asia, to understand how incubators are being used, whether they're being used, and what they learned is that there were very few incubators in hospitals because they're too expensive. But importantly, they also learned that they're actually not being used because most of the babies, 80%, are born at home. They're not born in hospitals. So they realized we can't just create a stripped down cheap incubator and bring it to this market. We actually have to create something that builds on a whole new model. And they did just that. They created Embrace. It's a baby warmer that looks like a sleeping bag. And they iterated, and based on this empathy, came up with this portable solution that doesn't require consistent access to electricity. It uses a phase change material in that top pocket. So that's an old material used in a totally new way. It keeps the baby warm but doesn't harm the baby. The baby goes into the other pocket and can stay warm for several hours. It's been very effective in emerging markets around South Asia, and it's now being tested here in the US and is pending FDA approval. Now, Jane certainly doesn't have the same situation as Mansukbhai, who invented this Mitti cool. She was in more of a manufactured environment, but she used the same mindset. They were students. They went to thrift stores to get their first materials. So they used resourcefulness, and they used a flexible mindset to create this Jugaad innovation. And what I especially love about this is that I think this is better than a traditional incubator, in spite of the fact that it's less than 1% of the cost. Because you can actually hold your baby. You don't have to put your baby in a box far away from you when it's a neonate trying to hold on for life. You actually hold your baby. It's so important for physiological development and for emotional bonding. This is when good enough can be better. This is a frugal, flexible, and inclusive approach that's better than a traditional product. Corporations are also starting to understand this approach to Jugaad innovation and applying these principles. This is a Mac 400. It's a ECG unit created by GE Health. And it's a very low-cost, portable, lightweight, and inexpensive way to measure heart rhythms, first created for the Indian market, okay, and now it's been evolved and changed slightly so that it can be useful here in the US. Again, FDA approval here. Very useful for our highly strained healthcare system. What I especially love about this product is, again, it's so simple that if you're in a rural area and you don't have access to a doctor, You might have another healthcare provider use this and measure your heart rhythm and then take it back to a doctor who can evaluate that. It's so simple. It's also portable, so flips the model of the patient having to go to the doctor. The doctor or the healthcare provider can go to the patient. A lot of this is being driven by so-called corporate intrapreneurs. Okay? These are individuals who start seeding ideas within large organizations to drive great change and solve seemingly unsolvable problems. Who remembers MacGyver? Yeah. So MacGyver, he was that 80s TV action hero, right? And he could extricate himself from almost any situation using what? Swiss Army knife, duct tape, right? Yeah, exactly. And that's a kind of jugad. That's jugad, right? Use whatever you have around you to solve a problem. Now, that was fiction. But the reality is DIY. The reality is Jugaad Innovation, the maker movement. So what's next? How will you leverage your flexible mindset and whatever resources that are available to you to become an extraordinary innovator? Will you create the next Embrace baby warmer or Mitti cool refrigerator? The future is really what we choose to create through our own knowledge, through inclusivity, and through resourcefulness. And above all, remember one thing. Scarcity reframed is abundance. Tag, you're it. Thank you.